Shalom Rab al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolom.
Temple Emanuel has been, for me, a very comfortable place. This is my home. It's been part of my life, and I feel like I belong.
It's a community. People want community. People feel comfortable in community.
There are traditions that go back 150 years.
We welcome everyone, and this is like a second home for my family.
A home is not just a physical structure, it's the people around you that you love, that care for you, and that you care for. And that's a sacred community.
We celebrate together, we grieve together, we find God's presence together. People will always think of Temple Emanuel as their home.
Good morning, Shana Tova. Shana Tova, nice to see you. Well, good morning, Shana Tova, nice to see you.
Thank you.
It is Rosh Hashanah. It is the first AM morning service. Shana Tova, how you doing?
Good.
Hello, Shana Tova. This right here in the lobby is my favorite time of the year because I get to meet and greet and say Shana Tova, Happy New Year to everybody. Shana Tova.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
With the sweetness of a new year in the air, a spirit kindled in the hearts of pioneers soars through the sanctuary of Temple Emanuel.
This morning we welcome in this new year full of possibility and sweetness of new beginnings. Hear, O Israel, Adonai.
For 150 years, the community that makes up the largest synagogue in the Rocky Mountain region and one of the largest in the nation has celebrated new beginnings through ancient traditions.
Tekiah, Shvarim Trua,
And a call that echoes across years and miles, even to the heights of the Rocky Mountains. As this new year begins, Temple members gather to dedicate a 2-mile-high youth camp chapel that they like to say makes them the closest congregation to God.
Members of the foster family truly embody what it means to be builders, who truly embody the ruach of Temple Emanuel, the spirit of Temple Emanuel, the spirit of Schwader Camp. There is no better way to honor you than to dedicate this holy space in this holy place.
This is a place that transmits Jewish life to the next generation. Every generation, there's a new focal point. And for us, and for the next generation, it's about taking those values that the rabbis have always talked about, that our history has talked, taking those values and making them real in everyday life.
So with great love, we now formally dedicate this chapel in honor of the foster family Beit Tefillah, this house of prayer.
From generation to generation, a commitment woven into the fabric of Temple Emanuel before there was a Temple Emanuel, or a state called Colorado. Rising almost overnight, Colorado's mining boomtowns lure dreamers to the mountains. For most, the dream is to get rich quick. For others, the only profit in a pickaxe comes from selling it.
What brought some of the early Jews here was trade, was mercantile. These weren't necessarily gold miners, but people servicing those folks.
We were one of the first Jewish families that came into Colorado. I think my father's family, as far as I remember, in the 1860s, came here. And my mother's side of the family, they lived up in Blackhawk, believe it or not. And he was a tailor.
My grandfather built a building and opened a general merchandise store in Platteville. And I was told it had a dance hall on the upper floor.
My grandfather and grandmother were Jesse and Nellie Schwader. Jesse Schwader was born in Blackhawk, Colorado. He started in Blackhawk with his family owning a shop where they provided food and clothing to the miners.
I've heard different stories of this, but I believe that my great-grandfather was a dairyman, and he lived in New York for a while, and it's hard to milk cows in New York City, so he came to Colorado.
From a mining camp in 1858, Denver grows to a town of nearly 5,000 people by 1870. But for all the opportunity, something is missing.
Where there was any concentration of Jews at all, and concentration meant more than one, there was a very tight affiliation with their Jewish roots. And they wanted to be able to pray and to have synagogue life, because at that time, your Judaic practice revolved around synagogue life.
In 1874, 2 years before Colorado becomes a state, Louis and Louise Anfenger host a small group of friends. When the meeting is over, a new home for Jewish life and values is born.
The core of Temple Emanuel were Reform Jews, and the Reform Jewish movement had behind it a concept of assimilation into the society.
150 years later, descendants of the Anfengers are Temple members, along with others with direct connections to the Temple's founding families.
We're really an old family. They were pioneers, and they wanted to come someplace where there was something new.
The first synagogue that they built was on 19th and Curtis. The next synagogue was on 24th and Curtis, and that building still stands today.
The early days of Temple Emanuel are plagued by too little cash and too many short-term rabbis, until 1889.
William S. Friedman, a dynamic guy, came here in his 20s. Handsome, dynamic.
Rabbi William S. Friedman may be too dynamic for some of the youngest members of the congregation.
Boy, okay, so, I went to Temple and everything. We go to Sunday school, and he'd come in, and all of us were scared to death of him. But he was a good rabbi.
And unlike the rabbis that came before, he was here to stay. For nearly 50 years, Rabbi Friedman is a larger-than-life presence within Temple Emanuel and a force for interfaith harmony beyond its walls.
He was an amazing leader, and I think that type of leadership, people noticed it around the country. That generated a lot of interest in Temple Emanuel.
To care for a tide of tuberculosis refugees coming to Colorado for the perceived benefits of its dry climate, Rabbi Friedman spearheads a drive that results in the establishment of National Jewish Hospital. He also leads efforts to create what becomes the United Way.
He was a moving force not only in Jewish life, but also in the city of Denver.
That spirit of outreach remains as powerful as ever.
Today, we had the great honor of celebrating our Interfaith Thanksgiving service, which is 146 years old, where we gather together with many faith leaders and celebrate gratitude. Temple Emanuel is one of the founding partners of the Interfaith Thanksgiving service, and we have always played a lead role in bringing people of different faiths together in Colorado.
On behalf of Mountview Church, our community, our staff, a warm welcome and a happy Thanksgiving.
Psalm 121.
Shir lamalot, esayna el harim.
As Jews, we feel a responsibility for tikkun olam, for repairing our world, for making it a better place. And this is one of the many ways that we as a congregation can state that this is important to us, that we love our community, we love our fellow faith communities and our partners.
I would love to tell you a story.
I used to host a TV show for kids in Chicago many years ago with puppets.
You see, this country had a tradition.
I offered the first year, and every year they've insisted that I, and more importantly, my puppet Yankel, continue that tradition.
You see, on Thanksgiving, we not only have to give thanks for all the goodness and bounty and glory that we have, but we have to remember where we came from, who we are, and how everybody has inside of them a slave and a king. It's up to you to decide. Happy Thanksgiving.
I am so lucky to be a part of this tradition that I inherited from my predecessors in the rabbinate and leaders of our community. It's a wonderful way to celebrate Thanksgiving, to put this into perspective, and we are thrilled that we were a founding partner and that we are continuing that tradition for 146 years. It's just a blessing. Tonight is the sixth night of Hanukkah.
This is the season of dedication, of dedicating our moments and our lives, of dedicating our hope and our strength to live by God's word.
It's also Friday night, it's a Shabbat, and every year on the Shabbat of Hanukkah, we have a short service followed by Hanukkah Hoopla.
1 little, 2 little, 3 little, 4, 5 little candles, now only 3 more, 6 little, 7 little, now there's 8, life is an applesauce on my plate.
Which is a wonderful celebration of music, of food, of arts and crafts, of families, of community. It's just a joyous, joyous night. So the word Chanukah means dedication, and as we think about the historical significance of 150 years of Temple Emanuel in this incredible building that was dedicated in the 1950s, we each day dedicate and rededicate ourselves to what our mission of our congregation is. So Hanukkah is a really wonderful holiday to commemorate what we are all about this year of celebration.
As the 19th century draws to a close, the congregation of Temple Emanuel outgrows one home and finds another.
I just remember it was a beautiful synagogue. And I was thinking about it this morning. They had the seats, and it was sort of a velvet, red velvet that we sat on.
There was also the ease of playing hooky because the fire escape led down from one of the classrooms.
At 16th and Pearl, the new temple is just down the street from the Orthodox BMH synagogue.
We weren't supposed to, but we used to walk from our temple and walk all over to BMH because we liked the boys better than the boys here. And my father used to give me holy whatever.
The dedication of a new building ushers in a new century that comes with the rise of old prejudices.
You got to understand, this city and state had the Ku Klux Klan for many years.
The Ku Klux Klan in Denver was ascendant in the 1920s. Our mayor was a Klanner, our governor was a Klanner. They controlled the state and the city, and that was tough for Jews.
I asked my father once why there were so few Jewish people in Washington Park. He said that's where the Klan lived.
Many of these communities literally had in their charters exclusions for Jews and blacks. And those didn't really start to go away till the 1950s.
But for the people of Temple Emanuel, isolation is not an option. Not then, not now.
Do you need some additional people to help move the boxes?
You can just put it right there.
Can I ask a favor? This one is women's shirts and sweaters, and we need it to go back here.
On a cold January night,
Currently 26 degrees and snowing.
warmth piles high in Temple Emanuel's social hall.
Other people are just calling it a mountain. Some people are calling it a pile.
Think this is reusable?
Thanks, Jonathan. We are collecting donations for the newly arrived migrants here in Denver.
Oh, which right now? Another pair.
Primarily, we're focusing on collecting clothes and backpacks and a few other really essential items that they need just to help them be safe as they arrive. We are currently the only location collecting clothes for these migrants.
Jewish tradition teaches us that we're not allowed to stand idly by. We just can't. We're not allowed to watch someone else suffer. And that's both because our tradition says don't, and it's also because our tradition also tells us that we know what it's like.
Right now we're just sorting clothes and making sure that they're appropriate and on the list.
Ari Greer is one of 3 generations of his family here tonight.
I wanted to be here tonight because I like supporting the community, and no matter your race, your color, it doesn't matter to me. Just that helping everyone just makes the world a better place.
One of the things that I think is really important about what we do when we show up for other people is that we're modeling, right? We're modeling for the rest of the community, we're modeling for the greater Denver community, and we're modeling for our children. And we hope that all of them are going to walk away knowing that this is a part of what it means to be an Emanuel member, this is what it means to be Jewish, right? This is what it means to be a part of a community.
It's a joyful feeling. It is just overwhelming. There's nowhere else I'd rather be tonight.
It is a night built on the timeless traditions of Judaism and on a Temple Emanuel heritage 150 years in the making and still going strong.
The last 150 years were awesome, but the next 150 have to be better.
We are having a women's Seder. It's very special. It's just so special to celebrate with women.
Why is this Seder different from all other Seders? Tonight we eat bitter herbs. We remember the bitterness of life when women do not have equality with men in society.
Sisterhood is a women's organization. They organize, they do things, they raise money, they support the temple in so many different ways.
The wise woman knows that teaching and learning our sacred texts and traditions are essential for Judaism to survive and progress.
150 years ago, there was a sisterhood right away, and I don't know for sure if it was called sisterhood, but it was there. Sisterhood has always been the backbone of the temple.
Sisterhood's critical role is front and center as America goes to war.
World War II brought a totally different dynamic to this country, to the Jewish community. You had several military institutions in Denver. You had Larry Air Force Base, which was established at that time. That brought a lot of service people to Denver, a lot of Jewish service people to Denver.
For many of them, Temple Emanuel provides spiritual support, while Sisterhood members muster a much-needed taste of home.
I think they would greet the trains as they came through town. And I know they had dances, they had food, and they just made the servicemen feel welcome and that they had a spot here in Denver before they moved on, that they could feel safe and encourage them as they went on their way because they were going to war.
One of the soldiers bound for the front lines is Rabbi Herbert Friedman, an Army chaplain who will later become senior rabbi of Temple Emanuel. Another is Marine Captain Joseph Crone, a former president of Temple Emanuel's junior congregation, believed to be Denver's first combat death of the war. Other young men destined for Temple Emanuel leadership joined the great cause of the greatest generation.
My dad fought with Patton's Third Army. He was with the first American troops to liberate Buchenwald concentration camp. And said you could smell the crematoria 30 miles away from the camps, and he saw it in all its horrors. And I think it changed him forever.
For Rabbi Herbert Friedman, chaplain duty gives way to another cause as the war ends.
He was recruited by the Haganah. Haganah was one of the two militant groups who were fighting the British occupation of Palestine. He recruited people, lay people at Temple Emanuel in Denver to help arm them.
Including one of the temple's leaders, Philip Milstein, who used Denver warehouses as covert armories.
Some of the folks here were in the food business, and they would pack ammunition in food cans and ship them abroad as food to Palestine at that time.
With the long years of war over, Temple Emanuel approaches a milestone. 75 years as both a congregation and a guiding force for Colorado. Celebrated in style, cited in a presidential salute. With the 1950s, another growth spurt for Denver brings a sad realization for the people of Temple Emanuel. It is time to say goodbye to a beloved home.
The old temple was almost inaccessible to the elderly because everything was upstairs. There was no elevator for a long time. They did eventually put an elevator in, but it didn't adequately serve the building. So eventually they had to move.
My dad was Emmett Heitler. He was responsible for a lot of the activities in the development of this location. He selected the architect for this facility.
As the new temple takes shape in Denver's Hilltop neighborhood, a new rabbi begins the first of his 24 years of service to the congregation.
Earl Stone was, to me, a hero. Earl Stone was a chaplain with the United States Army, and he landed on one of the beaches in '44.
The central story that I know about was the Passover Seder in the field. They sat in a field, and of course they had none of the accoutrements of doing a Seder. But so he would hold up the imaginary glass of wine and do the blessings, and he would break the imaginary matzah, and so on. And the soldiers were so moved by this that after it was over, they came up to him one after another with tears streaming down their cheeks.
Rabbi Stone's arrival comes at a crucial time for Temple Emanuel's new home on Grape Street.
Once we were in the new building, we didn't have the sanctuary until several years later because they had to raise the funds for that. I think my dad was instrumental in raising a lot of those funds.
Dad was the executive secretary, he's Mandel Winter, and he was kind of the on-site supervisor, if you want to call it that, but he was in there every day just seeing what was going on so that he knew the building intimately. Fortunately, that opened opportunities for me. I still have a little piece of paper that shows that I was here for the groundbreaking.
I worked here for 2 summers. The carpenters would cut this wood and they would stain it, and my job was to schlep on my shoulder 2 at a time every day up the ladder so they could put these wooden, I think they're 2x4s, maybe longer, 1 by 1 by 1.
You'll see, if you look in the front of the synagogue, marble that was purchased and supplied by a company in Marble, Colorado.
I think these windows are the most beautiful windows in any sanctuary that I've seen. It's almost like a Marc Chagall look.
Each individual stained glass window represents a different part of the Bible. There are religious and other sort of cultural feelings that come through when you see the sun coming through the stained glass in the east and then the stained glass in the west.
There are a lot of buildings that don't stand the test of time because they generate an old world look. But this building, I think, is because it's designed in such a way that I think it has an everlasting content to it.
As the 50s prepare to surrender to the 60s, the temple on Grape Street moves to the rhythms of community, family, and home, with all of life's celebration, triumph, and challenge.
My brother Ted was autistic, and of course my parents had a tough road raising a handicapped child. The temple, the congregants, and the rabbis remained welcoming to Ted really for all the rest of his year. Ted passed away in 2014.
To preserve the memory of Temple Emanuel's earliest days in its hilltop neighborhood home, Rabbi Stone and the leaders of the congregation prepare a time capsule placed in the cornerstone of the building to remain sealed until the temple's 150th anniversary.
All right, go ahead and relax. Just a gentle squeezes once in a while. Yeah. I'll be your phlebotomist today.
The approach of the anniversary brings an air of anticipation to events like the Temple Brotherhood's annual blood drive.
I have a funny story about that. So when I was the president of the Brotherhood, I had to put my name on the bank account. So I go to Wells Fargo, and he's like, there's something wrong. And he's like, what do you say that? Well, it shows you've been around since the late 1800s. And I'm like, no, that's right. And people can't get over the fact that Temple Emanuel has existed as a congregation for now 150 years.
For Temple members, a simple act like donating blood is a link to 150 years of community service and a sense of belonging that is timeless.
You know, it's just a vital part of the Jewish community here in Denver.
Thank you. Have a good one.
This is my home. It has been for my entire life.
Yesterday a child came out to wander.
Oh, Schwader Camp.
We're captive on a carousel of time. Tick tock, get up, stop.
Is just like this very wonderful, special place.
We like to talk about Schwader as a camp for living Judaism.
I believe that Schwader really does represent the crown jewel of the temple.
Sometimes a jewel in the crown starts as a diamond in the rough. The mountain getaway owned by Morris and Ruth Schwader takes on a new life when its donation to Temple Emanuel provides the home for a youth summer camp.
Camp was brand new, and we were the very first confirmation class and first campers to come up here. It was pretty rustic.
We're only one of 2 or 3 congregations in the country has its own summer camp like this, so that's what makes this so unique. And it was Uncle Max Frankel who made that happen.
He was educational director and camp director and many other things for Temple Emanuel. He was forever known at Temple as Uncle Max. My dad was at camp 6 days a week. Tuesday was his day off, and he would come down to Denver and work in his office during the day, you know, getting ready for the next school year, doing the other things that were his job. He loved it up there. He loved being with the kids, and he felt it was part of his mission to do what he was doing.
Across decades that cover nearly half of Temple Emanuel's history, Schwader Camp works its magic from generation to generation.
We started sending our kids, and what I loved about it is they had a camping experience, but they also had a religious experience. And I think it enriched their Jewish life.
Here we live Judaism every day. And it gets down to things like, how are we Jewish when we're playing sports? How are we Jewish when we're riding horses? And we talk a lot about that, and that's really part of what we live and what we teach here at Schwader.
People often look at Jewish life and they see, like in other religions, ritual. And ritual is an important part, but it's not the only part. One of the first couple of years that we were here, we had some themes, religious themes. And we did archaeology. And the staff buried things around the camp, and kids were led to different places. They dug things up, and they learned about archaeology and Jewish history by doing it, not by talking about it, not by reading a book. People don't always come up here and want to be ritually involved. But when they leave here, they are identified with the Jewish people.
What's become known as Schwader magic often turns campers into counselors.
I've done pretty much everything you can do at camp. I was a camper for 8 years. I was staff in training. I was a counselor for 3 years, and then last summer I was on senior staff.
I think camp brings so much joy to the community. I think it's how the kids feel the most themselves. And if we can create that and build that up here, they just have to bring it back home.
It's the values of Judaism and Jewish life that have to get transmitted. And that's what I think the next generation needs to have. Is the idea that we're not just a history. We are a history with values. This is a place where they live it for 2 weeks at a time so that it becomes part of your soul, part of your heart.
In a time of open conflict over American values, a new associate rabbi arrives at Temple Emanuel. Young, but already a veteran of civil rights marches in the South.
I grew up in a synagogue like this, and I'm comfortable without the rituals. Okay, I'm not a ritualistic guy, but I'm a social justice guy. The one thing we have to do is to stand up for what's right. Because those are the values that we as Jews preserve, and that is the dignity of every human being, black and white and brown and yellow and straight and gay and rich and poor and smart and dull, fat and thin. We're all created in the image of God. That's what the Torah says.
Steve was the assistant rabbi here for 11 years, and in 1981 he became the senior rabbi. Steve had relationships with all of the ministers in Denver, and they marched together at very appropriate times. They stood up for civil rights.
Across 40 years as associate and senior rabbi, Stephen Foster puts Temple Emanuel at the forefront of causes he embraces as representing core Jewish values.
Oh, he was vibrant, full of, can I say piss and vinegar? I just did. He was full of that. He had drive.
That drive brings initiatives on interfaith families, education, and more. with Rabbi Foster a familiar presence on organizations that share his commitment to basic human dignity. He even returns his cherished Eagle Scout badge to protest discrimination against gay scout leaders. Colorado's political elites learned that Rabbi Steve Foster is a powerful advocate for social justice. But from the pulpit, Rabbi Foster offers no endorsements. Almost.
The only candidate that Stephen Foster ever promoted from the pulpit was me.
It can seem like a big leap from guiding preschool kids on field trips to guiding a major city. Joyce Foster makes that leap in a run for public office.
I probably came most involved in 1977. I took a job with Jewish Family Service, and I was responsible for finding jobs for all of the immigrants that were coming to Denver. My son David had suggested I run for city council. There was an open seat. People in the congregation, when I called them to ask for their support, they said, "Joyce, what do you know about politics?" I said, "I don't know, Steve's just been a rabbi for all these years. It's pretty political, you know." And I said, I can catch on. I think I'll be okay.
Joyce Foster's 10 years on the Denver City Council and a term in the Colorado State Senate follow the lead of women charting new paths in temple leadership. Regina Height becomes Temple Emmanuel's first cantor, male or female. Janet Brunitsky begins a 25-year term as executive director, and other women break through the glass ceiling.
My name is Jan Friedland, and I have been a member of the temple since I was born. I served on the board, for probably 20 years, and they asked if I would be president-elect, and I said yes, and then I turned out to be the only female. I was the first female, and I got really teased about it. When I was president, it was the early 80s. I was on the pulpit for 3 years, every Friday night, and people couldn't see me. They had a stool made for me because the parishioners couldn't see me and I couldn't see them over the pulpit. And I was never allowed to carry the Torah because I would probably have dropped it. We were brought up in this temple, and it was just part of our life. If you go into the garden at the temple, you'll see a statue. My mother donated that from our family in memory of my dad because he was so active here. And it says, "Let justice well up as waters and righteousness as a mighty stream." I still love to come here. It's just home.
A home where an addition is more than just another room.
This chapel was dedicated in 1989. We can see 200 people here, which is sort of a perfect size. Many, many, many life cycle events take place here. This pulpit, that was in the old temple on 16th and Pearl. The pulpit chairs, those were also part of the Pearl Street Temple. The eternal light above the ark was in the sanctuary in the Pearl Street Synagogue. And the two lamps, one on either side of the bema, were also on the bema in the Pearl Street Synagogue. That stained glass window was from the Pearl Street building. The room itself, when it was conceived, did not have the synagogue furniture that we have here now. One of the things that I really had hoped is that we could find some way of memorializing this room because of the Holocaust. One day, I was reading a magazine. In the magazine, there was an article about these pieces of synagogue furniture that had been smuggled out, I learned, from Kolín, Czechoslovakia, The community of Colleen had 350 people at the time of the Holocaust. They were invaded by the Nazis in 1942. All of those people were taken to the concentration camps, with the exception of 16 who survived. Synagogue furniture from all these many, many synagogues was taken to a warehouse in Prague. This stuff was smuggled out, wound up in Zurich. There were 9 pieces of synagogue furniture that were there. I went to Zurich and purchased them on behalf of the congregation. There were 3 chairs, 2 of them in the front, 1 of them back here, that came from the pulpit in that synagogue. There was what we made into a Torah stand. We don't know exactly what it was. It was ripped out at the bottom. Then there was the ark, and then there was that piece above the ark and the 10 Commandments above the ark. This is the only usable ark from the Holocaust in the Western world. And there were 2 other pieces. There's a candelabra that had to have some repair, and there was the lamp that was in the middle of that sanctuary. There were a number of them, we think, because we've seen a picture. And so we incorporated that all together. The Nazis also took the Torah scrolls from all these places. There were over 1,000. And they stored them in this warehouse in Prague. And when the war was over, they were sent to the Westminster Synagogue in London for repair and distribution. And I called, and there were 5 Torah scrolls left from Colleen. And I asked them to send us the one, because it's only on loan. We've had it since 1989, and we have it in this ark. And it's just a special Torah scroll. Can't use it. It's in very, very poor condition. So the one from Colleen has a map, and that map is a map of the world. And there's a line from Colleen to Prague, Prague to New York, New York to Denver. After we had the furniture here, I gave a sermon for the holidays about the minyan, the 10 pieces. There were only 9, but there was 10 because of the Torah scroll. And I had the ark brought into the sanctuary and put next to the pulpit. And I gave the sermon about these pieces. This minyan that survived the Holocaust from Colleen. If I had to take the temperature of the congregation then, they would have given this a standing ovation. It was a commitment I made that when we have a service for a bat mitzvah in here or anything else where we have people visiting, we'll tell the story. There's a connection between Colleen and our congregation. Obviously that community's gone, but it existed for 800 years. We're doing our small part to keep it alive. I love this place. So when I walk into a place like this that has the history of Temple Emanuel, has the history of Colleen, I don't think we're just transmitting the words from the Torah, we're transmitting values. I believe that. And I believe that's what this whole place is about.
This mortar is tough, it's seasoned, it's been here a long time.
A secret more than 6 decades old is on the verge of being revealed.
You never know what you're going to find in here, you know?
But that's not the primary concern for Temple Emanuel member Bob Kershaw.
I'm wondering how hard this mortar is to get out. Now, somebody else can wonder about what's inside the time capsule. I'm just concerned about getting the stone out, hopefully without breaking it.
On the other hand,
I'm hoping there'll be a layer of diamonds in the bottom of it, and that'll fund the synagogue for the years to come, but we're not holding our breath.
with every probe from his drill and every chip from his chisel.
Real privilege to get to work on it.
Bob feels a connection to an enduring legacy.
This mortar is tough stuff, and this congregation, this clergy team, they are tough stuff and a force to be reckoned with.
It's truly an honor to be the senior rabbi of Temple Emanuel.
Since the 1889 arrival of Rabbi William S. Friedman, there have been only 7 senior rabbis to serve Temple Emanuel.
That is remarkable to me, and it shows that this congregation loves its clergy, that it cares deeply about what we have to offer, what we have to teach.
Again, Sammy heard a loud, catch your sneeze, help me, choo.
Teaching has always been a Temple Emanuel imperative.
My mom's Trudy Doc. She started at Temple Emanuel when she was 18 years old.
How are you? I haven't seen you in a long time.
Max Frankel hired her as a religious school teacher.
Trudy Doc becomes one of the first teachers at a preschool started by Rabbi Foster and Judy Hoffman, remaining there until her retirement decades later.
It was supposed to be a loving environment for the kids to thrive and learn about themselves.
Reach up high, touch your clothes.
About creating friendships.
Blow your candle.
And being good people.
The Rabbi Stephen Foster Early Learning Center at Temple Emanuel is not just for the children of Temple members.
Do you think the toy train helped him feel better?
It's not just for Jewish kids. It's open to anyone.
Judaism is just not a religion, it's a way of life.
Leaves are falling softly.
I think the non-Jewish kids learn that morals and values and respecting other religions, color, thoughts, and values of other people comes into their life.
Passing along those values has never been more crucial than it is now.
And it is with a heavy heart that I welcome you all here tonight.
Streaming to the world in a moment of profound pain.
The barbaric, horrible attack by the Palestinian terrorist group Hamas has simply been devastating for us.
Temple Emanuel offers solace and solidarity.
This full sanctuary is both beautiful and heartbreaking. We should not be here for these moments anymore.
Anti-Semitism is absolutely raising its ugly head again. That's why it's so critical that Temple remains strong. Our success and our survival is important not just to the congregation, but to the greater Denver Jewish community. We are the focus that keeps this Jewish community strong.
In the most painful times and the most joyous.
One more, there you go.
Here today we have our Purim Carnival with different teen volunteers leading the different activities. It's nuts. It's very high energy.
All right, you can do that one more time, okay? See if you can get that one.
The whole point of having these kind of kid-run activities is so that the teens can feel like they have leadership opportunities in the temple.
Okay, that's gonna be 2 points, okay? It's such an important part of my childhood and growing up, so I think staying connected is just really important to me, and making sure that generations to come, L'Ador V'Ador, like we like to say, is always kind of part of our journey.
temple was built to give a home to Jews. And in the next 150 years, this is going to be the place where Jews from an LGBTQ background, interrace, various backgrounds get to come and make this space not only a Jewish space, but an inclusive space.
Being included as part of the Temple Emanuel family takes on special significance during the holiest days of the year.
We return, we return.
Even from long distance.
Those who are here online, we're so blessed to be able to reach out to our community here or wherever you are, so that we can all pray together as one.
At some point during the pandemic, there was some service that in our tiny current congregation we don't have a service for. So I thought, well, let me go find one on the internet. So of course I tuned in to the Facebook page of Temple Emanuel and participated with you all.
We rejoice with trembling and enter Kol Nidre to face our humanity.
It is still home.
We return again to you.
Just a little sideways on this side. Exactly, that's good.
For every confirmation class at Temple Emanuel, a group photo is more than a memento.
You guys look great. Everybody looks wonderful. Look over here.
It is the final step toward becoming part of a cherished tradition.
And look at the camera, okay? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. That's great.
Look around. Okay.
Right there. Brings back so many nice memories. Daycare was in, and in the 80s as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that where you are?
Yeah.
In this hallway, photos of every confirmation class since the late 1800s renew the rich family heritage of Temple Emanuel.
I had a butch haircut back then, so.
Our father's picture's up, 1943. I think I'm the person with the turned head. I used to tilt my head a lot.
I think it's lovely. I think it's lovely that people come here tonight to celebrate all the years and what Temple means to so many people here. And I just think it's lovely.
Many of today's members trace an unbroken line going back several generations.
I still like going up and down and looking at those people and saying, okay, here's my grandfather, here's my grandmother's name, here's my dad with his best friend. I think it's perfect because it shows the continuity of young people growing up in this congregation for well over 100 years. My kids are on the same wall as their great-grandparents, and it's pretty spectacular to me.
The moment to reveal the secret of the cornerstone has arrived.
This is a very remarkable moment in our congregation's history, in the history of the city of Denver, Colorado, and in the history of the Jewish people. Not many congregations get to celebrate a 150th anniversary.
In images captured on this very spot, more than 6 decades of distance vanish, and faces from the mists of memory live again.
They're blessing this cornerstone, and lo and behold, you see Rabbi Stone, and he's got this big metal box, and you see him burying it in there. And I'm like, it is there, it is here, it's right here.
We are learning to be strong. We are words, and we are stories.
We are pictures of the past.
Emerging from the time capsule, a newspaper from the day it was placed in the cornerstone.
January 27, 1957, so is the end of the dedication of the temple.
There are temple bulletins, prayer books, dedication programs, and more.
This envelope, the men's club coloring an essay contest, and the names of all who entered in the winning entries of the honor scroll.
Ose shalom bimroma, hoya ase shalom aleinu.
On this day, touchstones of temple heritage renew the bond between today's members and those on whose shoulders they stand.
I think that it is an appropriate thing to observe. Big picture is that we stand for something. That's it. And Jewish life stands for something.
One of the reasons Temple Emanuel was established was to perpetuate ties of family, culture, and community. Enduring from century to century, reinforced from generation to generation. Strengthened through a living legacy of heritage, harmony, and home.
L'dor vador nagid godlecha. L'dor vador we protect this chain.
We serve as a role model for other congregations. As the largest congregation in Denver and one of the largest congregations in the country, people look to us. But we are not only looking back, we're looking ahead as well. What we are doing 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now is part of an ongoing tradition that never has stopped. We have to continue to open these doors to every person who might feel connected to and we want to have within our midst. I always want people to know that Temple Emanuel is going to be there for them and that we are a community of support, of faith, of love. That is what we are about. That will never change.
You see that very top one with Rabbi Zion?
That's you.
That's me. That's cool. I think.
We had the triumvirate in our class. I was the administrator's son. Susan Frankel was the educational director's daughter, and Jeremy Stone was the rabbi's son. So we pretty much had it covered.
You were a teenager, you know, an awkward time, but crushes above me. Who?
What's his name?
We're
not telling.
Right here, 1956. Alan Stryker, right here. When he was bar mitzvahed, I would sit at Temple and I'd watch while he practiced. And to this day, I can remember Lech lecha mi eretz lecha mi ba'atecha umi beis oviha. That was part of his bar mitzvah. Do I remember any of mine? None.
Et Adonai HaMevorach.
My great-grandfather helped form this congregation, so we have 7 generations in this synagogue.
We had fun. I wasn't much of a student in Temple. I got in trouble.
This congregation was a bit of an unruly bunch.
That's 10th grade. We had no cares. Life was good.
But Rabbi Stone was a very strict person about things going on in the sanctuary. And if people were talking, he'd give them the glare. And also people had to start wearing a little bit more formal clothes. But Rabbi Stone was actually the sweetest, kindest man on earth.
I remember some things about then, but the way my body feels now and the way I'm sure it felt then are very different.
Did he ever give you the glare?
Oh yeah, I got the glare. But it was okay. Sometimes his glare was affectionate.
A lot of history here. And right now I'm the matriarch, which sounds kind of weird.